On the last episode, I read Chapter 13, Grameen Bank 2, and Chapter 14, The Future. Unfortunately, I couldn't finish the Chapter 14, The Future, due to some technical problems. So I read up to the 200 pages, and today on this episode, I'm going to read the next pages. So the reading of the next two pages will mark the end of the chapter 14, the future. So let's continue from where we left. When my turn came to speak at the operating plenary session of the summit, I found myself thinking of Jovra and my very first borrowers, those who were raised to think that they were nobodies, worth nothing, and who had become sudden heroes at this summit. It was those people, with their lives of simple dignity, who had radically changed me from a bird's-eye view economist teaching elegant theories in a classroom to a worm's-eye view practitioner helping to introduce real and lasting change into people's lives. This is where I left. Yes, this sentence. Next, I sensed it here in this hotel ballroom in Washington, D.C. We had enough political leadership to make things really change on a global level. At last, we could reach the millions of poor in the world who were waiting for us to help them become self-sufficient. I stood up and made the following statement. As we assemble here, I ask myself, what is the Microcredit Summit about? Is it just another Washington Gala event? Gala, Gala event? To me, this summit is a grand celebration. We are celebrating the freeing of credit from the bondage of collateral. This summit pronounces the end of a long era of financial apartheid. This summit pronounces the end of a long era of financial apartheid. This summit declares that credit is more than business. Like food, credit is a human right. This summit is about setting the stage to unleash the human creativity and potential of the poor. This summit is to guarantee every poor person the chance to undertake a responsibility and to reclaim his or her own human dignity. This summit is to celebrate the success of millions of determined women who have transformed their lives from extreme poverty to dignified self-sufficiency through microcredit programs. This summit is not a fundraising event, I repeat. This summit wants to inspire the world by putting together all the good news we have created during the past years. This summit wants to build will, wants to build capacity, wants to end poverty in the world. Only 100 years ago, men were still struggling to find a way to fly. Many people doubted them and looked upon them as crazy people. But in 1903, the Wright brothers flew their first plane. It stayed in the air for just 12 seconds. It traveled only 120 feet. At that moment, the seed of a new world was planted. Only 65 years later, men confidently traveled to the moon, gathered up moon rocks, and returned to Earth. The whole world watched every moment of it on television. In the microcredit field, we're just testing our wings in a Wright brothers plane. We are covering 120 feet here, 500 feet there. Some find our plane unsafe, some find it clumsy, some find it unfit for the job. We can assure you we'll be ready with our booster rockets. We believe that poverty does not belong in a civilized human society. It belongs in museums. This summit is about creating a process which will send poverty to the museum. Only 65 years after the 12-second fight of the Wright brothers, men went to the moon. 65 years after the summit, we will also go to our moon. We will create a poverty-free world. With the energy that I feel in this room, I'm more confident than ever before that we will make it. Ladies and gentlemen, let us make it. Let us make it. Thank you. As I finished my statement, I looked at the audience. I knew there was applause, but I did not hear it. I was trying to imagine a world without poverty. Could anyone really conceive of such a world? What would it be like? Would it really work? The Microcredit Summit of 1997 set the goal to reach the world's 100 million poorest families with microcredit, along with other financial services, preferably through the Women in those families by 2005. During the Microcredit Summit Plus 5 held in New York City in November 2002, we reviewed the progress made during the last 5 years toward achieving this goal. Figures compiled by the Microcredit Summit campaign show that by the end of 2001, more than 54 million families around the world benefited from microcredit. Of this number, 26.8 million are among the poorest, or those who live with less than $1 a day. This is impressive progress from 1997, when we could count only 7.6 million poorest families helped. I'm guessing that by the end of 2002 we will have reached at least 35 million poorest families with microcredit. If this turns out to be close to the real figure, this would be significant progress. This would mean that we have crossed over a quarter of the path by 2001 and over a third of the path by 2002, and most likely we'll cross the halfway mark, or 50 million families, by 2003. Once we cross the halfway mark, we'll be better equipped psychologically and institutionally to cover the remaining half of the long journey. If this works out, it will mean that we have a good chance to make it to 100 million or reasonably close to it by 2005. To me, a world without poverty means a world in which every person can take care of his or her basic life needs. In such a world, nobody would die of hunger or suffer from malnutrition. This is a goal world leaders have been calling for decades, but they have never set out any way of achieving it. Each day, some 35,000 children around the world die from hunger-related diseases. In a poverty-free world, no children would die of such causes. All people would have access to education and healthcare services because they would be able to afford them. All state organizations that provide free or subsidized services for the poor could be done away with. There would be no need for welfare agencies, handouts, soup kitchens, food stamps, free schools, free hospital care. There would be no begging in the streets. State-run safety net programs would have no rationale to exist. State-run social security programs and income support programs would be unnecessary. Social structures in a poverty-free world would, of course, be quite different from those that exist today. But nobody would be at the mercy of anyone else, and that is what would make all the difference between a world without poverty and one riddled with it. Finally, a poverty-free world would be economically much stronger and far more stable than the world is today. The 20% of the world's inhabitants who currently live a life of extreme poverty would become income earners and income spenders. They would generate extra demand in the market, spurring growth in the world economy. They would bring their creativity and innovations into the marketplace to increase the world's productive capacity, and because people would become poor on a temporary and limited basis, the economy would probably not go through extreme swings. We would avoid boom and bust cycles and be able to surmount man-made disasters with greater ease. But even in a poverty-free world where all people would earn enough to care for themselves and their families, there would still be situations of temporary poverty due to sudden catastrophes or unforeseeable misfortunes, bankruptcy, business downturns, disease, or other disasters. A poverty-free world might see groups of people or entire regions devastated by some shared disaster, such as floods, fires, cyclones, riots, or earthquakes. But such temporary problems could be taken care of by market mechanisms through insurance and other self-paying programs, assisted of course by social consciousness-driven enterprises. There will always be differences in lifestyle between people at the bottom of society and those at the top income levels, but those differences will exist only between the middle class and the luxury class, not the third and fourth classes of the current system. Can we really create a poverty-free world? A world without third class or fourth class citizens? A world without a hungry, illiterate, barefoot underclass? Yes, we can. In the same way, we can create sovereign states or democratic political systems or free market economies. A poverty-free world might not be perfect, but it would be the best approximation of the ideal. We have created a slavery-free world, a smallpox-free world, an apartheid-free world. Creating a poverty-free world would be greater than all these accomplishments, while at the same time reinforcing them. This would be a world that we could all be proud to live in. This is the end of the chapter 14, The Future. Now, at the end of the book, a preview of creating a world without poverty is given here. So I'm going to read it. The next big idea. For 31 years, I have been working with poor people, particularly the poor women of Bangladesh, trying to do the best I could to change their lives. Much of that work was through Grameen Bank, through microcredit, which has become known around the world. It was my experience with microcredit and with Grameen Bank that led me to another idea, one I have been developing for some years now. Seeing that many poor people remain poor, I came to realize that one particular problem lay in our conceptual framework. That led me to address the issue of business. Today, when we think of business, we think of enterprises that are dedicated to making money to profit maximization. To me, that is too narrow a definition of people as economic participants. Human beings are much more complex than just being instruments for making money. So I began to imagine another dimension, a dimension where human beings want to be of help to other people to create a new kind of world through economic activity. This requires a new kind of business, one that I call a social business. A social business. A social business is a non-loss, non-dividend enterprise created with the intention to do good to people, to bring positive changes to the world, without any short-term expectation of making money out of it. That is the subject of my new book, Creating a World Without Poverty. It describes how social business can change the world and end poverty on this planet. There I'll be describing what social business is all about, how it can be created, how it fits into all our desires and wishes. This is not something I have had to invent. It is inherent in people. It never had the occasion to release itself. So, I'm just describing a framework in which people can express themselves by creating social businesses to address such issues as poverty, child labor, homelessness, the environment, anything we see that needs to be changed in order to have a better world. We don't have to put everything on the shoulders of the government. Governments are limited. They cannot do everything, and we have responsibilities as citizens. Social business is one way we can address them. To free market fundamentalists, social business might seem blasphemous, 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 The idea of a business with objectives other than profit has no place in their existing theology of capitalism. Yet surely no harm will be done to the free market if not all businesses are profit maximizing businesses, PMBs. Surely capitalism is amenable to improvements, and surely the stakes are too high to go on the way we have been going by insisting that all businesses, by definition, must necessarily be PMBs, and by treating this as some kind of axiomatic truth, we have created a world that ignores the multidimensional nature of human beings. As a result, businesses remain incapable of addressing many of our most pressing social problems. We need to recognize the real human being and his or her multifaceted desires. In order to do that, we need a new type of business that pursues goals other than making personal profit. A business that is totally dedicated to solving social and environmental problems. In its organizational structure, this new business is basically the same as the existing PMB, but it differs in its objectives. Like other businesses, it employs workers, creates goods or services, and provides these to customers for a price consistent with its objective. But its underlying objective and the criterion by which it should be evaluated is to create social benefits for those whose lives it touches. The company itself may earn a profit, but the investors who support it do not take any profits out of the company, except recouping an amount equivalent to their original investment over a period of time. A social business is a company that is cause-driven rather than profit-driven, with the potential to act as a change agent for the world. A social business is not a charity, it is a business in every sense. It has to recover its full costs while achieving its social objective. When you are running a business, you think differently and work differently than when you are running a charity. And this makes all the difference in defining social business and its impact on society. There are many organizations in the world today that concentrate on creating social benefit. Most do not recover their total costs. Non-profit organizations and non-governmental organizations rely on charitable donations, foundation grants, or government support to implement their programs. Most of their leaders are dedicated people doing commendable work, but since they do not recover their costs from their operations, they are forced to devote part of their time and energy, sometimes a significant part, to raising money. A social business is different, operated in accordance with management principles just like a traditional PMV. A social business aims for full cost recovery and more, even as it concentrates on creating products or services that provide a social benefit. It pursues this goal by charging a price or fee for the products or services it creates. How can the products or services sold by a social business provide a social benefit? There are countless ways. For a few examples, imagine a social business that manufactures and sells high quality, nutritious food products at very low prices to a targeted market of poor and underfed children. These products can be cheaper because they do not compete in the luxury market and therefore don't require costly packaging or advertising, besides not being under compulsion to maximize profit. A social business that designs and markets health insurance policies that provide affordable medical care to the poor. A social business that develops a renewable energy system and sells them at reasonable prices to rural communities that otherwise can't afford access to energy. A social business that recycles garbage, sewage, and other waste products that would otherwise generate pollution in poor or politically powerless neighborhoods. In each of these cases, and in the many other kinds of social businesses that could be imagined, the company is providing a product or service that generates sales revenue even as it benefits the poor or society at large. A social objective driven project that charges a price or fee for its products or services but cannot cover its costs fully does not qualify as a social business. As long as it has to rely on subsidies and donations to cover its losses, such an organization remains in the category of a charity. But once such a project achieves full cost recovery on a sustained basis, it graduates into another world, the world of business. Only then can it be called a social business. The achievement of full cost recovery is a moment worth celebrating. Once a social objective driven project overcomes the gravitational force of financial dependence, it is ready for space flight. Such a project is self sustaining and enjoys the potential for almost unlimited growth and expansion. And as the social business grows, so do the benefits it provides to society. Thus, a social business is designed and operated as a business enterprise, with products, services, customers, markets, expenses, and revenues, but with the profit maximization principle replaced by the social benefit principle. Rather than seeking to amass the highest possible level of financial profit to be enjoyed by the investors, the social business seeks to achieve a social objective. Social businesses' profits stay within the business. A social business differs from a charity or an NGO or a non-profit group in another important way. Unlike those organizations, but like a traditional PMV, a social business has owners who are entitled to recoup their investments. It may be owned by one or more individuals, either as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, or by one or more investors who pool their money to fund the social business and hire professional managers to run it. It may be also owned by a government or a charity, or any combination of different kinds of owners. Like any business, a social business cannot incur losses indefinitely, but any profit it earns does not go to those who invest in it. Thus, a social business might be defined as a non-loss, non-dividend business rather than being passed on to investors. The surplus generated by the social business is reinvested in the business. Ultimately, it is passed on to the target group of beneficiaries in such forms as lower prices, better service, and greater accessibility. Profitability is important to a social business. Wherever possible, without compromising the social objective, social businesses should make profit for two reasons. First, to pay back investors, and second, to support the pursuit of long-term social goals. Like a traditional PMV, a social business needs to have a long-term roadmap. Generating a surplus enables the social business to expand its horizons in many ways, by moving into new geographic areas, improving the range or quality of goods or services offered, mounting research and development efforts, increasing process efficiencies, introducing new technologies, or making innovations in marketing or service that deliver so as to reach deeper layers of low-income people. However, the bottom line for the social business is to operate without incurring losses while serving the people and the planet, and in particular those among us who are most disadvantaged, in the best possible manner. How long will it take for investors to get back their investment in a social business? That is up to the management of the social business and the investors themselves. The proposed payback period would be specified in the investment prospectus. It might be 5 years or 10 or 20. Investors could choose the appropriate social business in which to invest, partly on the basis of this time frame and on their own anticipated needs, as well as their preference for a particular social objective. Once the initial investment funds are recouped, investors can decide what to do with those funds. They might reinvest in the same social business, invest in another social businesses or a PMB, or use the money for personal purposes. In any case, they remain as much owners of the social business as before and have as much control over the company as before. Why would investors put their money into a social business? Generally speaking, people will invest in a social business for the same kind of personal satisfaction that they can get from philanthropy. The satisfaction may be even greater since the company they have created will continue to work for the intended social benefit for more and more people without ever stopping. The many billions of dollars that people around the world donate to charitable causes every year demonstrate that they have a hunger to give money in a way that will benefit other human beings. But investing in a social business has several enormous differences from philanthropy. First, the business one creates with social business is self-sustaining. There is no need to pump in money every year. It is self-propelling, self-perpetuating, and self-expanding. Once it is set up, it continues to grow on its own. You get more social benefits for your money. Second, investors in a social business get their money back. They can reinvest in the same or a different social business. This way, the same money can bring more social benefits. Since it is business people will find this as an exciting opportunity to not only bring money to social business, but to leverage their own business skill and creativity to solve social problems. Not only does the investor get this money back, he still remains an owner of the company and decides its future course of action. That's a very exciting prospect on its own. Broadening the landscape of business. With the entry of social businesses, the marketplace suddenly finds itself with some new and exciting options and becomes a more interesting, engaging, and competitive place. Social concerns suddenly enter the marketplace on an equal footing, not through the public relations window. Social businesses will operate in the same marketplace with PMBs. They will compete with them, try to outmaneuver them, and seek to capture market share from them, just as other businesses do. If a social business is offering a particular product or service that is also available from a PMV, consumers will decide where to buy, just as they now choose among competing PMVs. They will consider price, quality, convenience, availability, brand image, and all the other traditional factors that influence consumer choices today. Perhaps for some consumers, the social benefits created by the social business will be an additional reason to buy from it. Just as some consumers today prefer to patronize companies with a reputation for being worker friendly, environmentally conscious, or socially responsible. But for the most part, social businesses will compete with PMBs on the same terms as we see in traditional capitalist competition, and may the best company win. Social businesses will also compete with one another. If two or more social businesses are operating in the same market, consumers will have to decide which one to patronize. Again, Product and service quality will probably be the main determining factor for most customers. In addition, social businesses will compete for potential investors, just as PMBs do. Of course, this will be a different kind of competition than we see among PMBs. Consider two profit-maximizing businesses that are competing for investment dollars, two automakers for example. The competition here will turn on which PMB is perceived as having a greater future profit potential. If most investors believe that company A is likely to be more profitable than company B, they will rush to buy shares of company A stock because they expect to earn higher dividends in the future, and they also expect to benefit from continuing growth in the overall value or equity of the company. This launches a positive cycle in which company A stock rises in price, making investors happy. By contrast, when two social businesses compete for investors, the competition is based not on future profit maximization but on social benefits achieved. Each social business will claim that it is better positioned to serve the people and the planet than its rival, and it will develop and publicize a business plan to support that claim. Would-be social investors will scrutinize those claims carefully. After all, they are planning to invest their money with the goal of benefiting society, and they will want to be sure that their investment does the greatest possible good. Just as a profit-minded investor seeks to maximize expectations of future dividends and equity growth, a social investor wants to find out how close the company is getting in solving the social problem in a problem it is addressing. Thus, competing social businesses will push each other to improve their efficiency and to serve the people and the planet better. This is one of the great powers of the social business concept. It brings the advantages of free market competition into the world of social improvement. Competition in the marketplace of ideas almost always has a powerful positive impact. When a large number of people are vying, V-Y-I-N-G, are vying to do the best possible job of developing and refining an idea, and when the flow of money toward them and their company depends on the outcome of the competition, the overall level of everyone's performance rises dramatically. It rises dramatically. We see this beneficial effect of competition in many arenas. Intense competition among makers of personal computers, for example, has caused the price of PCs to fall dramatically even as their speed, power and other features have improved. The rise of Japanese manufacturers of cars and electronic products forced US and European companies to improve the quality of their goods so as to compete for both customers and investors. By creating a competitive marketplace for social benefit investing, the concept of social business brings the same kind of positive pressure to bear among those who seek to serve the disadvantaged people of the world. Competition among social businesses will be different in quality than competition among PMBs. PMB competition is about making more money. If you lose, you get financially hurt. Social business competition will be about pride, about establishing which is the best team to achieve the social objective. Competitors will remain friends. They will learn from each other. They can merge with each other at any time to become a stronger social force. Social businesses are friends dedicated to the same or similar causes. They collaborate to achieve their social goals. They will feel happy to see another social business entering the same area of business rather than getting worried. To attract investors, I propose the creation of a separate stock market, which could be called the social stock market. Only social businesses will be listed there. The existence of a public marketplace for trading shares in social businesses will have many benefits. It will create liquidity, making it easy for shareholders to move in and out of social investments just as they currently do with investments in PMBs. It will generate public scrutiny and evaluation of social businesses, providing a layer of natural regulation to supplement any government regulation that will need to be created to avoid the usual problems of the marketplace deception, false reporting, inflated claims, disguised businesses, and so on. And it will raise the public profile of the social business concept, attracting even more money and energy from investors and entrepreneurs alike. Two kinds of social businesses. At this stage in the development of the concept of social business, we can only glimpse its general outlines. In the years to come, as social businesses begin to spring up around the world, new features and forms of social business will undoubtedly be developed. But from today's vantage point, I propose two possible kinds of social businesses. The first I have already described, companies that focus on providing a social benefit rather than on maximizing profit for the owners, and that are owned by investors who seek social benefits such as poverty reduction, healthcare for the poor, social justice, global sustainability, and so on, seeking psychological, emotional, and spiritual satisfactions rather than financial reward. The second operates in a rather different fashion, profit maximizing businesses that are owned by the poor or disadvantaged in this case. The social benefit is derived from the fact that the dividends and equity growth produced by the PMB will go to benefit the poor, thereby helping them to reduce their poverty or even escape it altogether. Notice the differences between these two kinds of social businesses. In the first case, it is the nature of the products, services, or operating systems of the business that creates the social benefit. This kind of social business might provide food, housing, healthcare, education, or other worthwhile goods to help the poor. It might clean up the environment, reduce social inequalities, um, inequities, or work to alleviate ills such as drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, unemployment, or crime. Any business that can achieve objectives like these while covering its costs through the sales of goods or services and that pays no financial dividend to its investors can be classified as a social business. With the second type of social business, goods and services produced might or might not create a social benefit. The social benefit created by this kind of company comes from its ownership because the ownership of shares of the business belongs to the poor or disadvantaged as defined by the specific transparent criteria developed and enforced by the company directors, and financial benefit generated by the company's operations will go to help those in need. Imagine that a poor rural region of a country is separated from the main commercial centers by a river too deep, wide, and wild to be forded F-O-R-D-E-D, and wild to be forded by pedestrians or ordinary vehicles. The only way to cross this river is by ferry, which provides expensive, slow, and intermittent service. As a result, the area's poor and low-income residents face economic and social handicaps that depress their incomes, reduce availability of affordable goods, and lower their access to education, healthcare, and other vital services. In our example, we assume that the national and local governments are unable to address the problem because of lack of funds, political indifference, or other shortcomings. Although this is a hypothetical example, it accurately describes conditions in much of the developing world. Now suppose a private company is formed to build a new highway and a safe modern bridge to connect the rural area with the commercial center of the country. This company could be structured as a social business in two ways. First, it could provide access to poor and low-income residents at a discounted toll while charging a commercial toll to middle and middle and upper class residents and to large commercial organizations. Obviously, some kind of means testing procedure would be needed to verify the eligibility of poor people for the discounted toll. Perhaps the same kind of ID card that is used to indicate eligibility for government welfare could be accepted by the toll takers. The toll revenues would cover the costs of building, operating, and maintaining the bridge and highway, and over time they could be used to repay the funds initially provided by investors. However, those investors would receive no further profits. If profits beyond this are generated by the tolls, they could be used to build additional infrastructure to benefit the rural community, more roads and bridges, for example, or perhaps some social businesses to stimulate the local economy and create jobs. Second, ownership of the bridge and highway company could actually be put in the hands of the poor and lower income residents of the rural area. This could be done through the sale of low-priced shares, purchased by them with loans provided by microcredit organizations, or through credit that is later recouped from the profit of the company. Profits generated by tolls could either be invested in new infrastructure projects or paid in the form of dividends to the poor and lower income residents who own the company, thereby benefiting them in direct financial fashion. Grameen Bank makes small loans available without collateral and at a reasonable cost to the poor, thereby enabling them to start or expand tiny businesses and ultimately lift themselves out of poverty. Grameen Bank would be a regular PMV if it were owned by well-off investors, but it is not. Grameen Bank is owned by the poor. 94% of the ownership shares of the institution are held by the borrowers themselves. Thus, Grameen Bank is a social business by virtue of its ownership structure. If a big bank like Grameen can be owned by poor women in Bangladesh, any big company can be owned by poor people if we seriously come up with practical ownership management models. And yes, a social business could also combine both forms of benefit to the poor. It could follow a business plan designed to produce social benefits through the nature of the goods and services it creates and sells, and also be owned by the poor or disadvantaged. Social business is a new idea, but those who have learned about it so far have responded with enthusiasm and excitement. I believe it has the potential to change our world in a fundamental way, liberating the creative energies of millions of people and helping produce solutions to our most serious social problems. Okay, this is the end of the book. Banker to the Poor, Micro Lending, and the Battle Against World Poverty. This is indeed a New York Times bestseller written by Muhammad Yunus, and also you should remember that Grameen Bank and Muhammad Yunus are the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. Again, thanks for listening and your curiosity to learn and grow. Hopefully, we'll build a better future.